the whole thing about the cops shooting that woman in the back of their squad in Atlanta?
We're live now. This is Stone Guy 223. Appreciate everybody tuning in. I have not heard about that. So I'll have to check into that and report back to you on that one.
Let me put a link in there for you.
Um, so anyway, this is the Thursday night Tack Daddy after show, so to speak. Some of those guys were going to jump over and continue some conversations we had, but we started getting into a little bit of a conversation off air, just kind of how this whole Baltimore thing's playing out, and how the potential for maybe some. I don't see it diffusing itself. I think depending on the outcome of these officers' indictment, G Mango's he just stepped out. He's 10 minutes away from that area in Baltimore, and he said that he hasn't been able to get to his work for 2 weeks. It's the tensions are still high. Everything's still very volatile. So.
Did they ever come out with there was a thing on Fox saying that the guy got shot in the back and then...
No, that was a total false story. You're talking about the one just last day or two?
Yeah, it was. I want to say it was earlier this week. I never caught back up to the story. I was just like, oh crap. And
that was a false story, and Fox actually recanted. That was all facilitated by a bunch of angry or overzealous
so the guy
spectators, I guess.
The guy laying there on the sidewalk wasn't injured at all?
He was never shot. Now, I don't know if he was injured, but he was never shot.
He was like...
There were all kinds of fake stories came out from that.
Yeah. So
it was like that one about the one they said that a shopkeeper armed with a shotgun defended a reporter. No, a gang defended the reporter. The guy with the shopkeeper with the shotgun hid behind his shelf inside his window and watched through the window and let the guy be attacked. But it's funny how the story got changed for the news.
Yeah. I don't know, Foos. I think I posted it in there if you want to do the other link, but I haven't put it on my channel, gun channel yet.
You have or have not?
I have not.
Okay, I don't think I could do it to your channel.
Yeah, I put the main link in the lobby, so anyway, I'll put it in there.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have access to get yours.
So Tack Daddy, oh, what's up, Ryan?
What's up, Stone? What's up, everybody?
So we had let me do some quick introductions. We've got a few. Well, we know the Yankee Marshal, and we got Foos. GT350. He's I don't recognize his icon there, but he's been in here before. And we got Hawaii Volcano, the Tack Daddy. Got Mateo. We got PBR, and we've got Ryan from Armed Citizens United, and we've got Shooter SD. So, Tack, what was the other story that we didn't get to that we wanted to continue, or the discussion, I should say?
It's more about the guy from Texas and the guy with the Glock taking up the guys with the ARs, and whether or not ISIS is really here, and whether or not we should be additionally prepared.
Yeah, that's a good yeah, that's kind of a good. Who knows? Like I said before, it's not really a matter of being. I don't know if you want to say additionally prepared. I think we should always be prepared, but I also don't think that we should dismiss what seems to be a growing influx of domestic terrorists and/or ISIS supporters that have sworn to
Well, let's not pretend there's an influx. No, there's not. In fact, domestic terrorism is at a lower rate now than it was 15 years ago. But let's remember that it doesn't matter if they're actually physical here or not. There's always going to be the occasional nut jobs that are willing to be inspired by them, and we have the internet, so it doesn't matter if they're in our own backyard. They're still able to organize and communicate with these radical whack jobs anywhere they are.
What if they just made an announcement that there's 17 guys in 15 states or 71 guys in 15 states or whatever? You don't think that's a?
I don't listen to propaganda put out by terrorist organizations. So.
Oh, well, then you're impervious to all this conversation then.
No, I'm just saying anyone that's intelligent doesn't listen to propaganda put out by terrorist organizations. It doesn't affect how. It doesn't just change the numbers. That, like I said, domestic terrorism is actually at a low. We got to remember, back in the 80s, there was a lot more domestic terrorism than there is now. So there isn't any evidence to support them having a greater grasp on people nowadays, or having more people placed anywhere that are carrying out any noticeable threats to anyone. So until
ISIS is a invention is powered by the internet. That's where it gets its new recruits. I mean, people go to Syria to fight ISIS for whatever reason, but they're recruited by the internet. So it's like no matter how many airstrikes we get, if their internet recruitment rate is higher than the rate of the people that get killed on the battlefield, I mean, there's a lot of stupid people in the world.
Yeah, that's what I said. It doesn't matter if they're in your yard or not, because these people are being indoctrinated by the internet, making contact via the internet. So,
wouldn't that indicate that there'd be more of them and more of them?
That's what I was about to say. Given the internet and the accessibility.
But like I say, the fact that there are not more terrorist attacks now than there have been shows that it's not being that effective. It's just showing that there's always going to be radical, angry people, and they're going to radicalize around something. This is just the new thing they're going to radicalize. But around, back in
something that they're actually gaining momentum behind the scenes, and the fact that it's been built.
I haven't seen any evidence of that, and that was
builds to something that they do release in the future.
Well, you've got some intel that would point towards that. I would be more than happy to look at it, but just
again, there is no intel. That's the point. They're keeping it secret.
Well, there's plenty of intel. You see what's happening. Are things on the rise? Are there more arrests? Are there more people being found that?
So all of the intel is going to get all the secret shit too. There's no way to keep secrets.
I'm not understanding what you're saying there, because if there's going to be secrets, there's secrets, but you can't go around speculating on what secrets are. You have to look and see what's happening in the world around you. You can't go around continually.
In this case, in this case, where the actual piece that you're talking about is the fact that they're trying to be secretive, then yes, you have to take into account that they're
trying to be secretive. Who is trying to be secretive?
Trying to be secretive.
ISIS.
No, they're not
secretive. They're very upfront. They've
got a Facebook page.
Yeah, and they want you to think
they're talking about. The argument was the fact that you don't pay attention to their propaganda, yet you're talking about all this stuff that they now do that you pay attention to.
But you're saying right there, the very fact that they're flooding propaganda means they're not being secretive.
Yeah, that's not secret. Who's being secret? What's secret?
No, again, if they're behind the scenes saying we've got people that are in place, and you're saying I don't buy that.
Do you understand the actual art of terrorism?
The art of terrorism?
Or espionage.
Well, yeah, or espionage. It's the time that you talk the toughest is when you have nothing going for you.
There's
hold on.
On some of the stuff.
Do you think the fact that these reports from ISIS or ISIS members or the ISIS organization or outlets of that organization claiming to have these cells in place is pure propaganda?
That's crap. I mean, there's always going to be little groups of people here and there, but like I say, they've always been there. They've always been radicalized around one notion or another. It's not like we're fighting, oh God, there's 1,000 times more terrorists in the country now. There's really not. Now if you lived in like Europe, where there's actual open borders between your country and these countries with no real discernible barriers between you and them, and a lot less restrictions on well, I won't say less restrictions on migrating to your country, but it's so much easier there, and they're having mass influxes of these people, then you might have a little something more to worry about. But But even then, they're not seeing grand increases in anything.
Well, Europe has, yeah, they have a huge influx in Muslim immigrants, and they do have a big problem. But
Yeah, they have a much more big. Like I said, they're having a big influx of stuff that we aren't having. So
The whole point of terrorism is in its name. It's to terrorize, and you don't terrorize by blowing something up. You terrorize by blowing something up, and the psychological effect it has on the population is what is the real damage. You don't have access to like intercontinental missiles or long-range bombers, so you have to blow up a cafe and let the ripple effect happen throughout the population. So even if you don't blow anything up and you just claim or say or boast or whatever, release some videos on the internet, it has an effect, and it's in their name, terrorists, to terrorize.
yeah, well, asymmetrical warfare and specifically assassinations is endemic. I mean, that's native to, like, the Syria and the Middle East. It's been going on for over 1,000 years.
And the CIA and the FBI and.
So we got nothing to worry about then. It sounds like you guys got it all figured out. So,
We have a higher probability of being killed by our own law enforcement than we do terrorists. So.
yeah, I mean, just because I like the idea that it's a notion that we've dismissed everything and got everything figured out, just because we're not going to run around like Chicken Little.
no, we're examining whether or not it makes sense for the public to better arm themselves or be more vigilant.
Not because of
Man.
terrorism. There's probably 100 other reasons to do it, but terrorism wouldn't be the ones I would list for anybody.
When there's an incident like the one that goes on in Texas where they're claiming that, again, the two people that wanted to carry out something much more sinister.
The false flag. Those are a couple of stooges.
Yeah,
Okay.
if those guys were trained by ISIS, they would actually may have done something instead of got their asses shot off immediately. I
Well,
mean,
hold on. You can't say just because they weren't trained properly that they don't have the mind.
if they were trained properly, they wouldn't have done what they did. They would have done something completely. They would have attacked in a different way in order to.
Yeah,
as
but
many
you don't have to. You don't have to have.
Nazis.
They're
You don't have to have
radicalized but
proper-
not trained.
You don't have to have proper training to be part of a terrorist organization. You don't have to have proper training to have the mindset to want to do damage and do harm to people.
Why would ISIS? Hold
You
on,
got to
Yankee,
be kind of an alarmist.
Never
You got to
mind.
be kind of an alarmist person too, to go and turn the actions of two dead men into some grand achievement by some terrorist organization, a world away.
Why would ISIS waste its time and effort on two people that immediately got shot to death? I mean, they are claiming that.
So you don't think there's
No,
any?
that's an ignorant statement. What do you mean? Why would? It's not like ISIS. It's not like there's some president of ISIS handpicking their little soldiers. It's
No, but
anybody
they
that's
don't.
willing. Hold on, Yankee. It's anybody that's willing to get behind their philosophy and to get behind their cause and perpetuate this violence. Whether or not they're properly trained is irrelevant.
But to
No, actually, it is kind of relevant because people like that aren't very big of a threat, and they're always going to encourage any radical nut jobs anywhere to do anything that causes the semblance of making it seem like they're a threat.
so
But that's not the same thing as them being an actual threat.
if I got a sleeper cell in another country and they're fucking Laurel and Hardy and they immediately get their asses shot off, what does that do? Hey, look at these yahoos over here that got shot immediately. They're a joke. They can't even
It was a
scare
dry
a Girl
run.
Scout.
It was a test.
But yeah, test of. But
Some
like,
dry run.
It doesn't terrorize anybody to have like two guys that get smoked like within
I feel safer. I don't know about you.
Your enemy, when you show incompetence, that emboldens your enemy.
Actually, just because they didn't get away with it doesn't terrify any of you all. Think about those out there who don't carry guns daily, who aren't part of this community, and then rethink that entire
they're
statement.
completely emboldened by that because they're like, God damn it, the police protected all of them, and they'll protect me too.
This is all just in order for them to roll out some new scale Patriot Act that takes away more of our freedoms. They got a couple of patsies. They send them in there. They're like, oh, we get shot those guys down, but guess what, guys? There's 71 other terrorist training camps inside the United States. We can tell you all about them. We can't tell you where they are. or anything like that. But we're going to go ahead and roll out this legislation that's going to.
That was my other point.
Them.
That was my other point, Shooter, was that if the NSA is what we think it is, shouldn't they know who these dudes are?
They did. They were working for them. They're just. It's all the theatrics of rolling out the freaking hardcore.
That's a conspiracy theory, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, people conspire to do bad shit. It happens.
They've known who most of these people are, and they haven't stopped any. The guy that did that orchestra, the American that orchestrated that huge shooting in India, was on their radar like 4 or 5 different occasions with his ex-wife at one point coming in there and be like, this guy is going to kill people.
The Tsarnaev brothers were on the like all these things. They were on the radar. They had communication with these people, but yet somehow it slipped through the cracks.
Well, let's not go down the road that we should start prosecuting for people for crimes that we think they might commit because of what they say or who they associate with.
I'm just saying it's bullshit.
Because until they commit an actual crime, our country shouldn't be able to hold them or prosecute them in any way.
Just like that thing, where was it, in New York? I think they had 2 ladies that the FBI talked to them through social media or whatever, and whipped them up into a frenzy, and one of them said, "Oh, I'm going to do a bomb," or what. Neither of them had any of the resources or ability to pull anything off. The FBI basically supplied all the stuff that they needed to do, and then right as they were getting ready to do something, the FBI swooped in and frickin' arrested them. Oh, look, we got terrorists. And it's like, no, they're just a couple of frickin' knuckleheads venting, and then you supplied the means, the motive, and the know-how to have something done. Then all of a sudden they're terrorists.
Yeah, they did that here in Portland too.
That little guy that was going to blow up the tree lighting ceremony. They did the exact same thing. They found some crackpot on the internet that was trying to contact, Al Qaeda. They disguised themselves and said, "We're Al Qaeda. Would you like a bomb?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd like a bomb." And they gave him a fake bomb. He went and put it in place.
I think there's some internal FBI politics in there, as far as just people wanting to do something to advance their careers in the FBI that is just completely independent of any conspiracy. That let's do something to, so because when people do something big in the FBI, then they get more cred.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that. Then there also is that whole thing of I guess they call it proactive policing, where they give someone the option of committing a crime, and then if they do, and it doesn't, sometimes it's borderline. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's entrapment or not entrapment." It's a tight line. It's like if a cop stands on a corner dressed as a whore and someone propositions her for prostitution, is that entrapment? Because he wouldn't have propositioned her if she'd been standing there, or is it just showing that he was obviously out looking for a whore?
Right. You lost me on that.
Well, no, I mean, they do that a lot.
Yeah. They go around looking for people, looking for an opportunity to harm people, and then they give them that opportunity to harm people, and if they follow through with it, they arrest them. That's actually committing a crime. Attempting to harm people is just about as serious a crime as actually doing it. Just being unsuccessful doesn't change your intentions or your motive. And it's the same thing with prostitution. They set up cops around town who look like hookers, and if guys come up to them and proposition them.
Well, and it's kind of like what game wardens do. They'll set up fake deer decoys, and if then watch from a blind. If they take a shot at them, then they can arrest them. So people could argue, well, that's entrapment, but the fact of the matter is you were still doing something illegal, whether or not just because the police set the trap, it's still. You still had to facilitate the action for the illegal action to get caught. So
don't shoot at deer that are dressed up like hookers.
Yeah, but who's to say that the FBI doesn't do the same exact thing and then just go ahead and let them go head into it? Because there's speculation that the FBI called the SWAT team that was on call at that event like 15 minutes ahead of time.
You know what speculation is? Let me tell you one thing. Speculate in one hand and shit in the other and see which one is heavier. because speculation is worthless. And you got to actually deal with what's going on. And let me tell you, there's two types of secret in government and in the military. And this is anybody that's ever been in the intelligence game will tell you there's only two types of secrets. The ones somebody's already told somebody, and the ones someone hasn't told anyone yet. So these grand conspiracies, the reason you never see them come to fruition is because secrets don't get kept like that.
There was a really good example that I was on. I'm watching Turn, about the spies in the American Revolutionary War with George Washington, and there's this last episode was really revealing on it, and basically what the British spy commander Andre did was he sent in 2 agents into the American camp, and the first agent said, "There's a guy coming in and he's going to lie to you," and then the guy comes in and he said somebody's going to kill George Washington, and so then what happens is the 2 intelligence guys are trying to figure out which one of these guys is telling the truth, and the smarter intelligence guy says, well, they're probably both lying. So so the intelligence guys are bringing their own viewpoints on what they think the motivations of these 2 guys are, and of course the motivations is completely different than what either of them are saying, and the target isn't George Washington. In the end, the target was the spy masters themselves.
Right.
So, but which goes to show that when you look at a fact, you have to determine, okay, what you can't let your own biases and predispositions blind you to what's really happening, and because if you do, then you just won't see what is really happening. So when 2 dead guys show up in Texas, you can't assume anything, but you can't let your predispositions, on NSA or whatever your predisposition. And the same thing in Baltimore. You could look at them. They all, a cop shoots, or there's a dead black guy, or when that Fox, the cop was chasing the black guy in front of the camera in Fox News in Baltimore, and it's like, one girl says, the cop shot the black guy, and nobody was shot. And for 5 or 10 minutes it seemed like there was another murder on the street, but nobody was shot. He dropped a gun, it misfired, nobody was shot, and it wasn't a cop. It was the guy who was just running from the police. So people bring their own dispositions to any event and their own prejudice and biases, and so when you listen to people on the internet or just listen to the news, which is even worse, you just try and look at whatever small amount of facts they present you and then put that into context yourself. And if you do that, which is hard to do, then, and go through all the filters, then anyway, I'll let somebody else talk. I don't want to monopolize.
Let yourself just be terrified for nothing all the time. What kind of life are we living if we're allowing ourselves to run around and be terrified? And like I said, there's a dozen different reasons I could give someone to choose to carry a gun every day, to choose to be armed, to be prepared.
Wouldn't you say there's a difference between being terrified or living to be terrified?
I don't like this whole ISIS is in your backyard stuff. I mean, I know some people got product to fucking move, but I'm not going to sell fear. And until I see a reason for it, I'm not going to sell it. And it's just...
But there's a difference between being scared or living in fear and...
Really, what's that difference?
Well, in understanding that there's a potential danger out there. I guess not being naive to the fact that terrorism exists.
I have said about concealed carry every day. I've said this a dozen times in different videos. If you want to carry a gun because you're aware of the things that could possibly happen to you and you want to be prepared for those, that is the best kind of person. If you're carrying a gun because you think those things are likely to happen to you, seek therapy. And that's the biggest difference right there.
Well, and switching a little bit, another kind of topic we had talked about, and maybe hopefully someone's been following this, because ever since this Baltimore thing hit the fan, all focus has shifted from the officer that supposedly had wrestled for over a taser The taser was dropped. The guy turned and ran away unarmed and was shot in the back 6 or 8 times. And we've that's disappeared from the headlines.
I don't
And
know where that's at yet.
yeah, I don't know. Now I've heard in the Tac Daddy show I brought this up, and they were saying that they were able to I guess superimpose the image on the cell phone video, and they showed that the guy actually did deploy the taser on the officer, but it hit his vest, and so it was not effective. Um, but the fact remains that when the officer shot, there was no imminent danger. He was unarmed, and he was running away.
No imminent danger to him at that moment, but that doesn't. I've got a video on this that I've never edited. I need to edit it and get it online. But just because there's no imminent danger to the officer right now, your job as a civilian, your responsibility is for your safety and the safety of your family. Beyond anything beyond that, you get into legal jeopardy if you take anybody else's safety into your own hands, especially preemptively. But as a law enforcement officer, the responsibility is to the safety of the community. And if I'm standing there and I can say to myself, this guy just tried to injure me. He was willing to attack a police officer, willing to use a weapon on a police officer. If I let him get away, it will be my responsibility if he runs straight down with a family of 6 inside and starts taking hostages and killing people. You know, so
which is a valid. I mean, that is definitely a valid point. The problem is that general society doesn't understand that from law enforcement perspective, and the media doesn't help in getting that point across and selling it as such. The media consistently exploits it for their own selfish needs.
That's a downfall of the media and people in general, but it doesn't change the fact that that police officer is not only responsible for his safety at that moment, he's responsible for the safety of the next person that guy runs into when he rounds the corner.
I believe that officer is also been arrested and is down for first-degree murder charges.
Exactly. Yeah, that's one. But then this Baltimore thing kicked off, and we haven't heard another word about it.
Then hopefully he'll get a trial, and luckily when you go to trial, a jury will have that explained to them. A jury will have it explained to him that, hey, he's not just responsible for his safety, he's responsible for your child's safety, who might be around the corner that guy's going to run around, and he might just need a hostage. So
what a completely shitty. Go ahead.
Did that guy did he attack the officer? I watched that video, but I don't remember what he did. What's the background? Why was there a confrontation in the first place?
There was a traffic stop.
Vehicular stop.
And somehow during the traffic stop, the guy wrestled with the officer, then took off on foot, and then they got another little wrestling match, and supposedly the suspect got control of the officer's taser, deployed it on the officer, and but the barb stuck into his vest and was not effective, and then dropped the taser and took off running, and that's when the cop shot him.
So just a real quick poll: who here thinks that it's Scott? I think the victim's name was Scott. Is that guy going to be found guilty, or will they prove that he followed protocol as the police department and then be let off?
If it goes to trial and he didn't do anything wrong, I have every faith that he'll be found not guilty, because they'll be able to show that to a jury. Now, if they use that story and then they're able to show that, okay, the taser retrieved on the scene had not been fired, well, then his story is going to be a little bit weaker. So, it's all going to depend on what the evidence is presented to the jury. But luckily, like I said, the jury will be given the reality of the job along with the evidence of what happened.
Yeah, after I watched the video, or some of the other videos that came out, it appears that he did follow procedures. Like you said, he's responsible for the next person that the guy bumps into. So it appears to me that it's not this shady cover up. I mean, because even him picking up and moving the tasers, he picked it up so he could keep an eye on it because it was 20 feet away, and then he was like, why did I just set it down? I'll just reholster it. That doesn't look as nefarious as a lot of people make it out to be.
If it turns out that he did pick up the item and then go over and lay it next to the person he just shot, that's going to damage his credibility strongly. But doesn't mean he did anything wrong. It's just going to hurt. Maybe mean he made a mistake that's going to damage his credibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main problem is you know, what the media portrays. I mean, it's there's no way to really weed through the bullshit. You know, a lot of times people think when they see these stories that there's some kind of, you know, this side or that side. In reality, those are just the things that you're being presented, so people will fight over the two options that are on the table when the truth may be so far from those two options that finding out what actually happened is not even an option.
And
So,
People see what their biases. They see through like glasses, and those glasses are based on their own biases. And then the news talking heads channels just use that to pump up ratings. So.
And don't remember, just because you heard it on the news doesn't mean it's right. Because I remember not too long ago, and this is probably still easy to find on the internet, a couple of independent verification agencies, went through the news media systems and determined which ones of the three major news channels, which one was most accurate. Well, CNN was by far the most accurate, but they were only right like 58% of the time, I think it was. So it means 42% of the time they were wrong. And these numbers, I'm trying to remember them, but they're not exact numbers. But that's a good roundabout right there. They were right about 58% of the time, so they were wrong 42%. MSNBC was wrong a little more than they were right. And Fox was only right about 20% of the time.
If you're watching any of the mainstream media right now, you're being fed your information. It's being metered to you at dosages a lot like subliminal messaging was used in the 70s. I wouldn't trust anything I hear on that crap.
no, absolutely not. And the the crazy part about it is everybody prefers to be fed their information. If you really want to know, if you're really interested in a topic or the current events or geopolitics or something like that, you have to sift through all the bullshit, start to weed it down to a couple of common points, and then you have to do your own research. Fact checking the people who are the fact checkers to see if they were hired by said sources. Nobody or very few people actually go through that process to understand what's actually going on, and that's the problem.
If our local news tells me it's raining outside, I still look outside first before I believe it.
And Yankee, it'll be wrong 52% of the time.
Gee, how's it going?
Oh, can you hear me?
What's going on, man?
Oh, mangoes. Okay, cool. Yeah, we wanted to kind of we were talking about this Baltimore thing. Just wanted to get your kind of first-hand account, since you're right there in the shit, what you feel like the tone of the city and kind of the atmosphere is like there.
The whole city's mad, man. Mad. Just craziness. The cops are just getting crazier.
Now
it's not about Freddie Gray no more, man. It's beyond that. It's not even about the boy no more.
Now that something you said in Tack Daddy Show kind of surprised me, and we'll kind of get to that here. The fact that you said the police are kind of, I think your exact words were the police were
a lot more aggressive.
More aggressive in abusing people.
Yes.
Pepper spraying them at any drop of the hat, and so it's kind of, to me, it was I was kind of shocked, maybe in the sense that, well, I digress for just a second. When I asked about why, and I'm just going to say you people, not to be racist, but just like the Baltimore citizens, like why they're destroying their own town, and you said that it's out of towners, that it's not the people of Baltimore that are doing all this shit, that it's like people from New York and surrounding areas. So
Philadelphia.
right. So do you feel like the actual citizens of Baltimore, why aren't they up in arms trying to get these people out of their city and stop fucking destroying their town, instead of being mad at the police, be mad at these people that are coming and destroying your town?
Right. I don't
And
think
then,
it's all. I don't think all of it's done. Let me rephrase. I don't think it's the whole. I don't think everyone who's doing this out of town. I'm sure there's plenty of Baltimoreans that are doing it as well. And those are the people that are just not educated, and they turn into a race thing, man. You know, and that's basically what it has become for those few days. You know, it's a mess. There's no leadership. There's no fucking. That's the problem, man. There's no one there. You know, taking direction, taking. I don't know. It's a big mess.
well, and
Cops are getting a lot more aggressive, and the cops are not making it any better.
well, that's the thing that
You know,
surprised me is when you said that. I would think that given the atmosphere, that the police would be a little more, minding their P's and Q's, so to speak, given what's going on, and try to reestablish some good relations with the general populace, and try to bring about some sort of peace amongst law enforcement and the citizens. And it
let me tell
sounds like
you.
they're doing the opposite.
Let me tell you how fucked it up. How fucked up it is. Listen to this one. I didn't tell you. Just the other day, we were having dinner, and little G comes up to me and says, "Daddy, we were playing a new game today at school." I said, "Oh yeah?" He's like, "What's the game called?" He's like, "Oh, we were playing Baltimore." I said, "Baltimore?" He says, "Yeah, we acted like we were throwing things at the cop and we beat everybody up." Now I'm not going to tell you what I did to him, but I dealt with him my own way. But it's pretty fucked up. These kids are watching the news, and this is what they're getting. It's total fucking chaos there. Total chaos because nobody is fucking directing. No, but there's no leadership down there. It's a big fucking mess. Everyone is fucking just taking
And
this to another
that's pretty
level.
sad when it's starting to affect our children and our future generations. And
Yeah.
and like you said, especially from a law enforcement perspective, it's 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 disturbing to me that, with all with the way the media portrays law enforcement, and the media exploits these situations that happen, egregious as they may be, in some instances where law enforcement is absolutely in the wrong. The media still takes advantage and exploits these situations to the point where there's such a negative connotation associated with the word cop, or sheriff, or anything, that I think it's really going to start to affect the upcoming generations, and that's just going to perpetuate the violence and disdain for law enforcement, as these children grow older, and that's scary. That's what we need to try to change.
Yeah.
We've completely shifted from law and order to social justice, and it's being driven from the very, very top rungs of leadership in our country.
Yeah. I agree. Like I said, Ross, it wasn't about the kid anymore. You know.
It's about social justice, and it started in Ferguson, and nothing was done in Ferguson, so why not Baltimore? And I'm surprised nothing happened in South Carolina with that fella. I'm surprised there wasn't huge riots there. It's a growing, acceptable way to deal with something you don't like, and it's frankly, it's destroying our country.
Every day. And it's not just that, right? And everything ties into it. You know, like the racism. That's a big part of
The
it. I mean,
racism is an excuse, G. It's
yeah,
just an
of course.
excuse to do it.
Well, let's not let a bunch of white guys sit around and talk about how racism doesn't exist, because none of us have to go through it. But it
Well,
does.
I'll talk about it. I'm not a bunch of white guys. I'm mixed. My whole family on one side is black. I know what it's like to be driving while black, mostly with my brother. So that stuff absolutely exists. But I've been screaming about race baiting for the past 3 years. They're doing this on purpose. This
Of
is
course.
all very, very strategic.
Some people,
Divide and
but the
conquer.
people that are at the bottom rung of the ladder that are being exploited as income sources through fines and harassment, etc., and through fodder for corporate prisons, they're not baiting anybody. They're the victims of all this.
Oh, sure, sure. I'm not saying that it's it's one-sided, because it absolutely, the problem is we kind of get into this debate where there's one side of people who are like, oh, the race thing is bullshit, it's just an excuse. It is just an excuse, but it's also true to a certain extent. And the other side, it's all racism, they're picking on only us. It's like, well, wait a second, man. I've been a victim of this kind of thing. I've been a victim of the financial system that is when a cop pulls you over for no reason. I just was talking to somebody about this earlier, about how I think it's the DNR in some places. They actually swipe your credit card on the spot for you to pay certain fines and fees. So it's not just, this is universal. They're taking advantage of is being, it may be targeted in some areas, but it's universal, and the racism does exist, but it's also being used as a weapon to divide all of us. They're using the race issue to divide us and the police and all of that. I mean, this stuff is, it's a divide and conquer tactic. It's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also pretty clear that the stuff does exist. So we can argue
Oh,
with
yeah.
the means some people go about fighting back. And let's face it, when you're someone who doesn't have a lot of means to fight back, and you're very angry, eventually you are just going to burn someone's house, burn a car, or burn a business. It's just eventually it's going to happen as long as you don't address the issues that are facing those people. Because no one's totally powerless. Anyone that can pick up a hammer isn't totally powerless, and eventually everybody fights back. So if we want to allow it to get to that point, that's kind of on us. If we want to ignore it until it gets to that point, or we can start doing something about the actual problems.
100%. I think everybody's worried about the wrong stuff, and we're not attacking the root cause of a lot of this stuff, which is
I thought after
dividing us.
Ferguson we would learn. I didn't think that it would get
Wait,
like.
so what is the root cause?
Oh, I'm gonna let somebody else try and get to that.
I mean, there is a great deal of social injustice in this world, but it's not the job of law enforcement to correct the wrongs of society. It's the job of society to correct the wrongs of society. The law enforcement people should just be there handing out tickets when you do something wrong and investigating a crime. They shouldn't be being used to maintain and control the status quo, which unfortunately is what they're being used for now, to maintain the status quo.
Yep. And you don't tell the officials and the police to stand down either. The mayor of fucking Baltimore, her dumbass she fucked up on that one. Completely.
Yeah, that was going to be my next comment. Was it sure seems like in places where they have a lack of leadership, this shit happens.
Did anyone read her entire statement, the one that got quoted in the newspapers?
Which one, the DA or the mayor?
The mayor's entire statement, when that whole speech she gave, where she said that
About the people having a place to wreck things.
Riot. Yeah.
Because if you read the whole statement, I mean, her wording is poor. She could probably do well to take a few diction classes and learn how to word her speeches better, since she's going to be on a podium speaking to people. But it was very clear that if she would have done that properly, the whole point of her thing was, we are not going to be an oppressive regime. We are going to give people the room to exercise their rights and protest. That means we won't harm anyone, no one will harm us, and that will also include a small number of people that are going to riot and do things that are wrong, but we aren't going to trample on all the people that are doing it right because of the few people that are doing it wrong. And if you read her thing, it's actually pretty clear that's what she's saying, and it was pretty clear. And even the media, I was watching one of the people on Fox News, even one of the field reporters, like, yeah, if you read the whole thing, it kind of does come across that way, but that's not how it sounded. And I'm like, yeah, but the job is of the media is to portray it the way it really is, not to sensationalize. And they chose to sensationalize that and make it stupid and make it sound really bad when they could have cleared it up and made things better, but they went the other direction with it. Because I totally agree with the sentiment that we are going to give people the room to exercise their rights. And there's going to be, and out of those 200 people that we're giving the room to exercise their right, there's going to be 2 people that decide to get out of hand. We're not going to crack down on the crowd because of those 2 people. We'll deal with those 2 people.
Yeah, it was a hell of a lot more than 2 people. It was like crowds of people that were.
There was a lot more than 100 people there too. There were
that were burning down their senior center and burning down their
for
stores.
every one of those people you saw, there were 100 that were doing nothing that you didn't see.
Well, the cops have the means to differentiate between your peaceful protesters and your non-peaceful protesters.
How often do they actually do that?
Well, it doesn't matter. You should at least be trying to stop the crime that's happening. Protest is not a crime. Burning down a fucking building is.
If there's a crowd of like 300 or 400 people, you don't act preemptively and just say, okay, we're rounding you all up and you're getting the fuck out of here. Then you've just trampled over their rights to peacefully assemble, their right to protest, their right to free speech, etc. Just because you know one person's going to riot. And that's not acceptable to me. You deal with the rioters as they do it.
Yep.
And they didn't. They let them loot. They let them riot. They let them do what they know they shouldn't have done. They got videotape of them, and they still not going to press charges against them.
Yeah, I think that it's a tough call for both sides of that argument because you know what Yankee's saying is definitely right. You can't tell people to not have their right to do do anything when it's something like that. But then, you know, how how do you stop it? There's 300 or 400 people in a crowd. There's a couple of buildings off to the side. You know, who can you? You're not gonna be able to see everything that happens. And I think the issue, the problem is happening before we even get to this point. And
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Because that's a tough scenario for anybody.
It's kind of like gun ownership. We right now as gun owners and supporters of the Second Amendment, we sit back and we totally acknowledge that yes, if we allow everyone to have their constitutional rights to bear firearms, there are going to be a few that misuse that right either through incompetence, ignorance, or malice. And we will deal with those people as they happen. We're not going to crack down on everyone because of those people.
Okay, I see where you're coming from, Yankee, but again, I run a red light, a camera snaps my picture, I get a citation. You got hundreds of people that are on video looting, stealing, burning, and they're not going to do anything with those folks. Anything. Is that leadership?
There's the difference between those two scenarios. You paying that speeding ticket that all it took them was a half a cent worth of electricity to snap a picture and develop a photo. They're making money off that. If they devote all the manpower and time and everything to arresting these people for property crimes, that's not helping them. That's not making them money. It's costing them money. And unfortunately, they make too many of their decisions based on their pocketbooks nowadays.
The fact of the matter is, you do nothing, you incite the next one, because hell, nobody's going to do anything about it. That's what happened in Ferguson. Nobody did anything about it, so the Baltimoreans said, well, fuck it, we're going to do it.
No, we can't say nobody did anything. Look at the number of arrests there were the night of, the night after, etc. There were people being arrested, but unfortunately they decided that their manpower was best spent in blockades around relatively peaceful groups. And then that allowed splinter groups to split off and go, hey, all the cops are standing over there watching the protesters. Let's go burn down a building.
Yeah, I saw that. I mean, I wasn't there, but the video TV coverage I saw was like 25 guys out there burning buildings, and easily discernible the crowds that were peacefully protesting and not peacefully protesting, and those cops were told to stand down.
And Baltimore's a beautiful city.
Actually, there were no.
Dude,
Beautiful, but it's
I
not.
grew up.
It's not the
See,
city.
I
I
grew
know.
up in the area.
Oh, I know where you grew up. I know. But here's the
There was
problem:
a-
it's not the city; it's the people in the city.
Yeah, and there was no stand down order given at any time during the night of the protests. That did not happen. Every news organization has admitted that there was no stand down order given the night of the protests.
So they got a bunch of lazy cops that just didn't feel like going out there and getting it done.
You got to remember there are a lot more people walking around with cell phone cameras and media there than there are police officers. And the media are smart. They see the people that are sneaking off away from the main groups to do shit. They follow them and they videotape them. Very seldomly in any of those videos do you see like 5 or 6 cops standing around while it's happening, because they're not there. They're somewhere else.
I didn't see them at any of those places.
That's right. Because
and so you're saying the media, who are not trained in police work, are smarter than the police on the ground to figure out that these guys are going to go this way or that way. That's bullshit.
No, that's not bullshit at all. If you've ever been a member of any type of organized law enforcement or military, you understand that the unit moves much slower than the individual, and those media people, they move as an individual.
Yeah, and I would even argue that the media people are more savvy in recognizing those things at times.
Oh yeah, you should see them. They had their hard helmets. Oh man, they were like dressed up for the occasion. I tell you, they were ready to go.
Yeah, the more acceptable you make it, the more often it's going to happen, and before too long, all it's going to take is somebody to lift a finger, and we're going to have riots all over the country, because now all of a sudden social justice is the end thing. Law and order can take a back seat because social justice is the big deal about shit that happened 100 years ago.
And that's the problem, because they can't get over it. That's the problem, man. I like I said, I grew up here, Baltimore, DC. I'm right in the middle of both. And unfortunately, man, that's exactly what it is, Ross, that they cannot overcome what happened hundreds of years ago. But the thing is that black people were not the only ones that slaves. We were all fucking slaves.
Well, it's like the same thing someone said in one of my videos today. They said something about how all the black people should be given a pass because of slavery. And I was like, nah, that's bullshit. That's like saying that I should be given a pass in life because my great-grandfather was in prison for 35 years for something he didn't do simply because he wouldn't give in to the state. I was like, that put a real hurt on my family and their chances to succeed in the world, and that's much closer to me than your generation of slaves were to you. Now, if you want to deal with what's going on now, there's tons of injustice going on right now against anybody that makes poverty wages or lower. And if we want to deal with those real issues, I am 100% behind them. I'll be there with a picket sign. But if you want to make it about something that happened, 100 years ago to your great-great-grandfather, well, then you don't have my support.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, if the law doesn't support social justice, then there's probably something more with the law, because I believe more in justice than I do the law. I would rather
you'll never get justice for the slavery that happened 60 years ago.
No one wants justice. I just want justice empirically, because to me, justice is more. I worry about more whether something is just than I do whether it's lawful. I would rather think it would be lawful and just.
You know, it's sad, Ross. It's also the kids. The kids
you look at the numbers in Baltimore, and more whites are killed than blacks. So what justice are we talking about?
Justice is in the eye of the beholder.
Well, what justice are you talking about not having? Social justice doesn't just apply to white or black. Why are you making it white or black?
I'm just saying they're saying that there's an injustice happening right now, and it seems from what we're hearing that there's a racial tension in the city of Baltimore right now, because the blacks feel like they are being executed by the police.
Well, they are persecuted by the police. The numbers support that 100% in Baltimore and in Ferguson. When the numbers came out, the black people were like, what was it, 7 times more likely to be arrested for minor offenses, 9 times more likely to be fined, etc., for daily activities. So they are.
Whites are killed at 4 times the rate.
And how many whites were killed this year, and how many blacks murder-wise?
I want to say by the cops, I want to say those numbers were like 150, 160 to 460, somewhere around those numbers.
Well, they measured at 1,200 per year is how many people are dying from the cops every year.
Yeah, that's outrageous, and it doesn't matter if they're black or they're white, but still,
I agree with that. I
that,
agree with that.
that's one
But
total.
social justice, if you're going to talk social justice, and you're talking that this particular situation is a racial tension, what is it based on? What is that social justice based on?
Social justice is based on doing what's just for everybody, and there is a racial disparity. I can't say the word right now, but that does exist. You can't say it doesn't. When they are being prosecuted at a much higher rate, when they're much more likely to be found guilty, it's like there was an independent study of trials, people that were white and black charged with the same crimes. The blacks were convicted and prosecuted at a rate 5 times higher than whites on their first charges. So that is an injustice right there. You can't just narrow it down to one thing and say, well, more white people got shot by police this year. Well, maybe more white people thought they could get away with some stupid shit where black people know, hey, if the police are there, they're going to shoot me.
And most of the statistics will tell you that most of the violent crime is done by the minority community. So even those numbers don't make sense.
And why is that? Why is it done?
Because you want to know my honest opinion why that happens? Because the minority population is set up by the government to do poorly. It's all they're given a chance to do. They're given handouts.
Well, that would be social injustice right there. But
there's no judge. That's not what we're fighting. That's not what they're fighting about. They're not fighting about the government. They're fighting about some racial tension.
Yeah, and Ross, you're 100% right. You know what the problem is with that though is a lot of those people. I mean, these are people in my demographic for sure. Some of my peers, and they're not aware of. They're not even close to aware of what you're talking about. All they see is my brother got thrown in jail. My cousin got thrown in jail, and then the media perpetuates that same meme. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. But if you're in the middle of that and you've seen it hit you, and then you see something advertised, because I call the news is not the news anymore. It's their advertisements for agendas. And if you have been a victim of something, then you see it covered the way that these racial issues are covered. What are you going to think? Especially if you're not, we talked about people figuring out the media, figuring out the news for themselves, knowing that basically nobody does that, and then putting yourself in, a 29-year-old black kid's shoes who lives in Baltimore, who sees this stuff, and then watches it on the news. It doesn't matter if that is actually not true. It doesn't matter if more white people are killed. To those people right there, they don't see anything else. They're looking through a real small lens, and the lens that they're looking through fucking sucks. So I get it, even though it's a misrepresentation. That's why I just zoom all the way out, and I'm like, look, there's no way we can fix this problem. We have to fix the root cause, which again I'm gonna defer because that's going down.
Come on, go ahead and say it, Ron. I want to hear your version. You're half black. I think you have a more personal, investment into this whole situation.
Yeah.
Call a spade a spade.
All right, a spade a spade. All right, black people have no fucking role models anymore. That hurts. That hurts them. Black people don't aspire, and I'm generalizing. All right, so I'm. Obviously,
Space Nine.
There's speaking in very broad generalities. If you look at, an inner city community that is, I can go down in downtown Atlanta, and I've lived in a bunch of these communities, and the kids in let's say what are high school kids' age? Was that 14 to 18, 14 to 19? If you look at what those kids aspire to be, or what are they looking forward to doing in their life, you got more kids that want to be a football player, that want to be a rapper, there's kids that actually aspire to being drug dealers. Why is that? Why is that happening?
They make a lot of money, they see nice cars. The thing is that we're not missing is that from experience, like I said, I'm only 15 minutes away from there. My business is there. I got friends there, family there. The thing is, guys, is that there's no father Their fathers are gone. We're talking about kids that live with their grandmothers and single moms that got 2, 3, 4 kids that are cracked out of their fucking minds.
Yeah, if they
These
want
kids
a
are
male
11
father
years
figure,
old. Hold
they
on,
join
Ross.
a gang,
These
and then
kids are,
that's when
hold
you
on,
get your
Ross.
MILF.
These kids are 11 years old and they're selling fucking crack.
Yeah,
And they're
well,
fucking paying their moms and they're paying their grandmothers so they can pay their fucking rent.
I don't give everybody a pass because they didn't have a dad, because I was raised without a dad
That's
by
a
my
big
grandmother.
problem,
So I
dude.
don't give people a pass for not having a dad. And it was like
Yeah, I agree. I
I
agree.
was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about how she's a black lady, and she was talking about how, oh well, the income disparity and all this other stuff, and it just makes it
I'm
hard to
not giving
overcome, and they're working
anybody.
all the time and all this other stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that explains a lot of the problems that this socioeconomic group has, especially your race. I was like, but the socioeconomic problems you're facing is not what is causing this whole mindset that I'm more of a man if I got 12 babies and don't support none of them. And it's not that socioeconomic mindset that's making them put, like I was telling the story, I was walking down the mall one day and a guy walking along with a little 2-year-old wearing a shirt that said pimp and slap a bitch on his hat. And I'm like, you're dressing your 2-year-old up like that. That's what you have. That's what you aspire for him to be, a pimp.
Right.
I was like, so that's not socioeconomic. That's cultural. So we can deal with the socioeconomic systems if we all came together as a people. The hardest thing to deal with is going to be the cultural issues. And that whole, I'm a man because I got 12 fucking babies by 10 different women, that's going to have to be dealt with too.
That's
Oh
the
yeah.
entitlement. That's because we keep paying them more for those 12 kids.
Well, they don't care if anyone's getting paid for them. They're not the ones getting paid. They're not the ones getting paid for them. It's the women. The men are just going from woman to woman, making baby after baby like it's a fucking trophy that they somehow makes their dick an inch longer every time they have a baby.
But it
Yeah.
is. But see, that's
not
what
only
that's where
that,
it comes into play, though. If you look at who we reward in these cultures, and you can look at this totally outside the black community too, and see the same things. It's just this has been this program of, look, you can call it conspiracy theory all you want, but I work in these fields. I know super high level executives at big media companies. To think that the gangster rap culture, and the drug dealing stuff, even the movies that come along with it, to think that that doesn't exacerbate what Yankee is just talking about, and then the media perpetuating false realities, twisted truths, only
Somebody,
reporting on certain things. Dude, this
somebody,
is it
please
all
tell
is
me
just
how it's.
everything.
Somebody, please tell me how it's supposed to be my job to figure out what's fucked up about somebody else's culture.
It's
Not my
not.
job.
It's
Not
not.
your job, but if you want to live in a society that's dependent upon each other to develop a strong society, it's kind of behooves you to do such things because you got to look out for yourself and your fellow man if you want to live in a nice society.
Well,
Well,
that's
and the fact of the
communist. That's
matter is,
communist.
the
Actually, that's
fact of the matter
communist.
is the entitlement
That's
attitude.
not even close to communist.
That is exactly what communism is.
That's closer to socialism than communism, and it's not even socialism.
No, you're not talking about fixing social problems. You're trying to integrate an entire culture because the entire state needs to will be stronger if we have. That's communism.
No, it's not. Feeding someone that's hungry because it's better for that hungry person to be fed than it is for them to get
That's not
hungry.
what you were talking about before.
Building is not communism. If you think that's communism, I suggest you take maybe a 401 level course on world governments or something, because that's not communism.
Well, you just switch what you're talking about from feeding
No,
somebody
I said if
to
you want to live in a
raising up
society,
changing the culture of to make the entire whole culture stronger. Yeah, it's communism.
No,
The only way to change the culture.
Wait. That's not even communism. Once again, please go look up the definition of communism before you
I
embarrass.
took a class on communism once, but okay.
Try paying attention or showing up, because
That's a good point. I was in college back then, so.
Well, I think everybody who's said stuff on here is right. That's kind of the problem. Is that a lot of times we all get on these conversations and these topics, and we're trying to figure out what's the problem. Well, there isn't a problem. There's a myriad of problems, and then they're being exacerbated by everything that everybody sees. And then by the time you start to digest one thing that's in front of you, you start to realize that that we're not actually getting to the root problem. We're actually just kind of skating around on the surface, and then by the time you
I
start to get
asked
to
you
that,
what
you're
the
on to
root
the next.
problem is before. And what is the root problem?
Well, that's what he just said. He just said it's a lack of role model in black community.
Well, I don't think that's.
He thinks it
I
is.
think
that's
I
not
think
the root
that's a. I think that I think that's a huge
I
part
don't
of
know
it.
if the lack of role models is it's just people glorifying the wrong role models. Because I see lots of black people. We got a fucking black president, for God's sakes. There's
Yeah.
role models available for the black
I
community.
wouldn't use him as a role model. But
Well, no, but I see what he's saying. Maybe I should have said this. It's the combination of all these things that we're talking about. But if I had to pick one thing, I would make it the combination of not having a role model, which isn't an excuse in and of itself. But then when you don't have a role model, and then your mind from a young age is being poisoned by some of these things that we're talking about, the media, the cultures that are just breeding this stuff. Think about these are kids that are being indoctrinated at preteen and even younger years. So by the time we're seeing them on the TV throwing a Molotov cocktail, we've got real problems.
I got 5-year-olds that flip me off and be like, "Fuck you, policeman." I'm serious. I'm talking 5-year-olds.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about.
That's probably because they've seen your YouTube channel.
And it's because of their fucking parents. It's because of their culture and their environment.
Exactly.
Really, Stone? You don't think a 5-year-old could come up with that by himself?
And it's not just
man.
it's not just blacks though, because I've got some really, I mean, I know you're gonna find this shocking, but most of one side of my family is all fucking poor white trash, and my cousin's kids, and they think of me as their uncle, even though I'm just their second cousin, but they always think of me as their uncle, and they'll come see me and they will be like, "Oh fuck, there's the popo," and I'm like, "Where do you learn that shit?" Well, they learned it from their dad, who's a fucking loser, who gets in trouble all the time. So it's pandemic in that socioeconomic class. It's pandemic now that everything else is bad, and because they don't let us do what we want to do.
Oh yeah, and here's another thing, and people don't. I'm in advertising, okay, so I'm gonna harp on this stuff.
my rating of you just went
It's
down.
been
You work for an advertising agency?
I'm a partner in an advertising agency. Yeah.
Oh man, that's terrible. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm trying to bring all this to the gun side, so I'm one of the good guys. But I could tell you this, that people don't realize how influential their digestible content is. And I know this because I do advertising that is very overt, using obvious tactics, bait and switch stuff and all that. But I also use advertising tactics that are subliminal. And let me tell you, people don't realize they're being indoctrinated. That shit works. I don't care what anybody says. You see, I challenge you to go on a college campus and try and walk during, in between classes, try and walk 30 feet without seeing somebody that has their headphones on listening to music. All right? And commercials, all of the stuff, we talk a lot about gun bullshit like in movies, right? Where somebody gets shot with a 9mm Glock on a TV show, they go flying through the window and practically fucking disintegrate, right? Well, there's liberal people out there that have never picked up a gun. They actually think that happens. Well, it's the same thing. If you're 5 years old listening to gangster shit, and you're going to do that all the way up until you're 25, you don't think that that's going to affect your mindset when you're being indoctrinated by the news, the people around you, and the content that you're digesting? These people are fucked up.
Well, those
by all of
bad
this.
gangster stuff is those are the big. The reason those gangster people that they sign to make a lot of records are big. The ones that are popular are street, and they're real, and
Yeah.
they're actually like that.
Yeah, exactly.
They will kill you.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think the 50 Cent story. You guys, I'm sure you guys know about him. His whole story is rags to riches. It's amazing, blah blah blah. But you guys know that is a 1 in a bazillion chance that you can have that opportunity. Yet there's tens of millions of kids, black and white and Hispanic and Asian, that are going to try and travel that route, thinking that if they slang enough keys on the streets that they're going to get a rap deal because they're more legit.
Well, it's also
Well,
like
yeah,
the
that's
ones
how it
that,
works. They actually show up to the studio. Basically, they'll roll up to the studio in some car with a bunch of hubcaps, expensive hubcaps. I'm serious. And
how
and
many hubcaps do they have on their car?
and Paris, well, they have expensive hubcaps, and then they'll show up and they will drop like 20 when they used to have studios. I don't know if they have them anymore. I mean, but they used to show up and just drop $20,000 in $10 and $20 bills on your table and say, "We need some studio time." And then if you say yes to that, then you're going to be really sorry for the next few weeks. And you'll be lucky if you don't get in a shootout, which actually happens in like one of the biggest studios of Burbank, where the studio manager didn't know at the studio called the Enterprise in Burbank, not to book an East Coast act in one room and a West Coast act in the other room, and another room, and that they had like 10 studios in this complex, and there was a gunfight. And when they found out, so
Get rich or die trying.
it's well, if the money comes from pimping and drugs, I mean, and people have made it that way, but what it sells is if they have artists that are real, you know and there's a circuit, people can go, the artists can go on and do live rap shows and open for bigger acts and stuff, and there's a whole circuit, like there is for hard rock bands, a circuit for rap act bands that they can go on and make money just doing live shows.
I'll be right back.
You sure know a lot about rap music for like the whitest man I've ever met.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, I used to run a recording studio, so
Did you really? Where at?
Burbank, across from Disney, and mostly I did film work, but when I first opened, they filled a lot of spare time.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah.
but yeah, it was on Olive and Buena Vista in Burbank.
You guys remember? This is gonna get a laugh. You guys remember D4L?
No,
That song, "Shake That Laffy Taffy." You guys remember that song?
I can't remember that shit.
It was a
like
really
rap.
popular
I
snap
sold studio
song.
time.
But they're here in Atlanta. They filmed some of their video at my house, and I just remember thinking like, "Oh
I
my
worked with
God!"
some of the NWA guys, but
Oh, that was awesome back in the day.
yeah. Well,
I mean,
you
if
say
you like
so.
rap music.
If basically what a rap session is like is that somebody shows up with some beer and some pizza, and it's a big party, and there's somebody's laying down a rap, and their party gets louder, and you turn up the volume, and the party gets louder, and you turn up the studio volume more so you can hear what you're doing, and then you have everything wide open, and everybody just keeps talking louder, and because it's a party, and and it's anyway. That's all I have to say about rap band.
That's all I have to say about that.
Now, ad agencies, are you in the Red Book?
No.
Small
No,
time.
yeah, dude, that you're talking about like Euro and Starcom and all that kind of shit, like the big dogs. We don't. We've got some big stuff. If we ran the last Advil series. I ran Heineken.
Well, is it just based on whether you're in the Red Book, how much media time you buy and sell, or something?
Um, I've never. Anytime I've been involved with stuff at like Euro, I used to do like negotiate buys for them. They would always brag about that stuff. I think it's the amount of ad buying you do, or that you've received, or something like that. I don't. It's kind of like bragging points. All those big ad agencies like that. Ogilvy's another one. They're all they do. They do great production work and all that, but all they do is they hire E&G groups that are really great producers and editors, and they just sub it out, and then they bill off of the the ad buy, and they're totally raping their clients, totally. And
yeah, but they're usually their clients are raping the customers. So.
Their customers, absolutely. So everybody's just happy and fat, and that's how it works. But
well, we might have to do a whole ad chat one day. It seems like there's a lot to talk about in that. But
dude, the media side of things is huge.
Commercial is all I have to say.
The
Infomercial, you said?
but to
Yeah,
get back
yeah,
a little bit to what we were talking about with the I think there's definitely, I think, like we said earlier, with the whole internet thing, the social media, there's way more exposure to these different groups. There's way more information being shared, and so therefore, I think it's just, I think it's definitely magnified the potential for groups to organize like ISIS and to really branch out and to get more followers in way more countries than, like Yankee you were saying, in the 80s, when we had a higher, I guess, percentage of domestic terrorism, but we also didn't have the internet in the 80s. So I don't think that, I think now it's a more, I think it could be facilitated way easier with the internet than back then. But I don't know. I think ultimately, the biggest thing to take away from this whole situation is to be aware, and don't be naive to the fact that we have people on our soil that are willing to kill Americans, simply for
But be
because ISIS told them to.
be far more wary of the fact that you've got someone probably in your town that's willing to kill you for your wallet than you need to be worried about terrorists.
Well, that's true as well. You are right about that. But I think that's a good point.
I always
Place
try
to
to tell
end it.
people, I always try to tell a friend of mine. She watches that show Locked Up.
Oh yeah,
Those
Lock Up. Yeah.
You see those crazy dead stare assholes that would bite your throat out for looking at them, and you can see they're there. You see them on that show. I said, I guarantee you right now, anytime you're anywhere in Portland, there is someone like that within 300 yards of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's. I mean, if you. Well, I mean, hell, just watch the news. Like you said, there's fucking crazy people everywhere in this world. So,
yeah. You just get over. I'm over it. I'm over that people yelling loud to pretend that they're big and and trying to scare people or puffing up. You just prepared if they'd actually do anything. I don't care about the words coming out of their mouth.
right. But I think that was a good chat. We stayed on topic for the most part. I think that's a good place to end it. It's a little over an hour, so I'm going to shut it down here. I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight and all the panelists that hung out and kept the conversation going. So, as always, I appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
Hey, God bless America.